CEO swore never to love again until his friends set him up on one last blind date with the woman who saved his daughter. Ethan Carlyle sat rigidly at the small wooden table, his tailored blazer oddly out of place against the rustic charm of the countryside diner. The air smelled faintly of maple syrup and freshly brewed coffee, but none of it reached him. His expression remained cold, unreadable, as if carved from stone. The waitress had just taken his order. Black coffee, no cream, no sugar. He did not plan to stay long. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath, glancing at the time. His best friend had insisted, practically dared him to show up for this blind date. One last shot. They had said, just one evening, you owe it to yourself. Ethan disagreed. He didn't owe himself anything, least of all another entanglement. Not after losing his wife in a fire that turned their world into ashes. Since that night, love had become a closed chapter. He was a father, a CEO, a survivor, nothing more. He was about to leave when she walked in, Claire Donovan. She scanned the room briefly, then spotted him. Her golden hair fell in soft waves, loosely tied back, strands catching the soft glow of the hanging lights. She wore a simple white t-shirt tucked into well-worn jeans, clean sneakers, no makeup. Yet there was a calm elegance to her, something grounded. She smiled as she approached the table. Ethan, he stood up out of politeness, nodded. Claire, they sat. The first few minutes were stiff, polite. He answered in clipped phrases. She responded with patience, never pushing. She asked about the town. He asked about her job at the dog training center. There was something familiar about her voice, her presence, but he couldn't place it. He chalked it up to déjà vu. Just as Ethan reached for his wallet, preparing to end the evening early with a polite excuse, the diner door burst open. "Daddy, a high-pitched voice cut through the air like a spark. A small girl with curly brown hair and bright eyes and a pink dress came running toward him, her arms flailing with excitement. Ethan stood in surprise. "Ava, what are you?" But Ava didn't stop at her father. She ran right past him, her little arms wrapping tightly around Claire's waist. "That's her, that's the lady from the fire." Claire froze. Ethan stared, breath caught in his throat. Claire looked down at the girl, her hands gently resting on the child's small shoulders. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "you saved me." Ava said proudly, "You were the one. I remember your hair and your eyes. You held me when I was crying." Ethan's heart slammed against his chest. He had never forgotten that night. The chaos, the screaming, the thick smoke. The firefighter who carried his daughter out of the burning wreckage had vanished before he could thank her. All he remembered were those golden curls streaked with soot and the steady voice whispering to Ava, "You're safe now." Claire looked up slowly, her eyes meeting Ethan's. Realization dawned. "Oh," she said softly, her voice catching. "I didn't know." Ethan couldn't speak. He could only look at her, the woman who had saved his daughter's life, sitting right in front of him all along. And for the first time in a very long time, something inside him shifted. The diner had quieted down, the initial shock slowly melting into an uneasy calm. Claire had moved to sit beside Ava, her hand gently resting on the little girl's back as she soothed her with soft, steady breaths. Ethan watched them from across the table, his heart pounding. He had questions, too many, but none that seemed appropriate to throw into the fragile stillness. "I'm sorry," Claire said finally, brushing a lock of golden hair behind her ear. "I didn't know tonight would be this." Ethan shook his head. Ava looked up at her father, then back to Claire. "Can she come with us, Daddy, just for dinner?" There was no way Ethan could say no to that face. He nodded once, and Claire smiled gently. The waitress returned, confused but accommodating, and brought them fresh menus. As they settled in, Ethan stole a glance at Claire. Her features were calmer now, but there was a tension behind her smile, a layer of history just beneath the surface. The evening sun filtered through the windows as conversation slowly resumed. Ava doing most of the talking, pointing out her favorite cartoons and asking Claire about her favorite colors. Claire answered each question with warm patience. Ethan, however, remained quiet until dessert arrived. Then softly, he leaned forward. "Do you remember the child you saved from that fire?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Claire paused, the spoon halfway to her lips. Her eyes, ocean blue and deep with memory, met his. "Yes," she said. "I remember her eyes. I see them sometimes in my dreams." Ethan's throat tightened. That was Ava. Claire blinked, stunned. Her hand drifted unconsciously toward the little girl beside her, as if grounding herself in reality. "I didn't know," she said slowly. "They took her away so fast that night. No one told me her name." Ethan's mind drifted backward 1 year ago. The blaze had devoured everything. He had gotten there too late, but as the paramedics had rushed Ava to safety, he had seen a figure in the smoke carrying her out. He'd never seen the woman's face clearly until now. That night, Claire continued, her voice softer now. "I thought I was going to die. I wasn't even supposed to be on shift. I got called in last minute to cover for someone. When I saw her in that room, all I could think about was getting her out." Claire nodded slowly. "That fire changed everything. I left the department after that. Couldn't even drive past a siren for months. What do you do now?" he asked gently. She gave a faint smile. "I train rescue dogs. Therapy, search, and rescue. There's a facility out on the edge of town. Quiet, peaceful. The dogs help me more than I help them. To be honest," Ethan looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the image he had carried in his mind all these months. She was stronger, softer, real. Ava, still sitting close, leaned her head against Claire's side. Ethan took a deep breath. "Would you join us again sometime for dinner? I mean." Claire looked at him with something unreadable in her gaze. "This time not as a blind date," he added, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. "Just dinner from a grateful father." She let out a soft laugh. "All right, just dinner." He nodded. "Just dinner." But they both knew something deeper had already begun. Next day came with the softness of early light, but Ethan was still thinking about the night before. He had not expected to stay through dinner, much less ask Claire if she would be willing to see Ava again. She had hesitated at first, not out of reluctance but caution. Still, when Ava had clung to her hand and begged, "Can we see the dogs?" Claire had smiled and said, "Yes." Now, as Ethan pulled into the gravel lot of the K9 training center, the morning sun cut low over the trees, lighting up the metal fencing and wide open fields, where dogs were already being walked and trained. Ava kicked her feet excitedly in the back seat, her pink dress puffed up like a tiny ballerina's. "Do you think the dogs remember me?" Ethan glanced back with a rare smile. "They haven't even met you yet, kiddo." Claire was waiting at the gate. She wore jeans, dusty sneakers, and a white t-shirt with the Sense logo. Her blonde hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She waved them over as Max, a black and white retriever mix, wagged his tail beside her. "Welcome to our little circus." She grinned, opening the gate. Ava lit up. "He's so cute." "What's his name?" "This is Max," Claire said, crouching to Ava's level. "He's still in training, but he's very smart." "Want to help me with him today?" Ava nodded furiously. "Yes, please." Ethan followed, hands in his pockets, silent as he watched the exchange. Claire had a way of speaking to Ava, not as a child to be coddled, but as a person to be guided. It was subtle, but it struck him deeply. Inside the training yard, Claire walked Ava through a simple command. 2 fingers up meant sit. Ava practiced once, then again. Max responded every time with a cheerful bark. "You're a natural," Claire said warmly. Ava beamed. Then, out of nowhere, she looked up and said, "I wish you were my mom's friend." Claire blinked. "Why is that, sweetie?" "Because she would have liked you," Ava said. "Serious now, you're kind and you listen." Ethan's breath caught. Claire didn't flinch, just reached out and gently drew Ava into a hug. "I think I would have liked her too." They moved through the center, past rows of pens, each holding a dog with its own story. Claire told Ava about them all. One had survived a hurricane, another had been trained to find missing people. Ava absorbed every word like sunshine. Later, Claire spread out a picnic blanket in the shade. Ava settled in, Max curled beside her, tongue lolling. Claire pulled a tattered book from her canvas bag. "Mind if I read to her?" Ethan nodded, still standing a short distance away. "Go ahead," she sat cross-legged, opened the book and began to read. Her voice was soft, calming, like the whisper of waves on sand. Ava leaned into her, eyes wide, completely absorbed. Ethan watched from behind a post near the fence, arms folded loosely across his chest. He wasn't thinking about work or deadlines, or how long it had been since he let anyone into his life. He was thinking about how peaceful this moment was, how effortless, how right. And for the first time in a long, long while, he let himself exhale. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the windows of the training center, Ethan found himself standing outside the main entrance, hands in pockets, heart uncharacteristically unsure. He had hardly slept. The image of Claire reading to Ava, the gentle way she calmed the dogs, and that peaceful look on Ava's face had lingered in his mind all night. Claire greeted him with a curious smile. "Didn't expect to see you here this early. I wasn't sure I'd come," he admitted, "but after yesterday I couldn't shake a thought." She raised an eyebrow, waiting. Ethan took a breath. "I'm developing a project through my company's foundation, a model neighborhood designed around child safety, fire awareness, emergency response, animal-assisted education. I want your training center to be part of it." Officially, Claire blinked, surprised. "You want to partner with us. I want to work with you." He corrected gently. "This center, your work, it's more than impressive. It's real. It makes an impact." "That's what the project needs." Her smile faded slightly. "Ethan, I've worked hard to keep this place independent. The last thing I want is to be someone's charity case." "It's not charity," he said firmly. "It's a chance to do something meaningful together. You bring skills I don't have. Heart, patience, connection. I bring resources. We balance." Claire hesitated, then glanced toward the yard, where Ava was already playing with a golden retriever puppy. "You'd have to be involved, not just fund it from afar." He nodded without hesitation. "Then I'll show up, I'll train, I'll wear whatever vest you give me and I'll learn. Just say yes." She studied him for a beat longer, then let out a soft laugh. "All right, Carol, but don't say I didn't warn you. These kids are relentless." Later that, "If your trust is in money, you jars, a borrowed pair of sneakers, and an orange training vest that didn't quite sit right on his tall frame." Claire smirked the moment she saw him. "You clean up well. For a rookie, be kind," he muttered. "I haven't done anything remotely physical since college." The children gathered in a half circle, Claire leading the session as Ethan stood beside her awkwardly. She handed him a clicker and leash and whispered, "You're leading the next round. What you said you'd learn." She replied, eyes twinkling. Ava beamed from the back. "Go, Daddy." Despite his initial clumsiness, dropping the leash once, calling the wrong command twice, Ethan kept going. Every time he looked at Ava's glowing face, every time Claire nodded with subtle encouragement, something inside him softened. The pressure he wore like armor began to melt in the sun. Claire watched him from the sidelines, now arms crossed, her expression thoughtful. There was something different in his presence, less CEO, more human. As the children wrapped up and laughter echoed across the yard, Ethan walked over. Panting slightly, You survived, she teased. He grinned. Barely. Claire looked toward Ava, still chasing the puppy. You were good with them. Better than you think, he shrugged. I had a great teacher. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't feel like a man just getting through the day. He felt like someone building something real with hands, heart, and a little girl in a pink dress, reminding him what truly mattered. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the open field of the training center. The sky was soft with golden light, and laughter echoed as a group of children chased after the rescue dogs under Claire's supervision. Ava was among them, her pink dress fluttering as she ran with unfiltered joy, her small arms outstretched like wings. Ethan stood off to the side, leaning on the wooden fence, watching her with a gentle smile that rarely made its way to his face. He could almost forget the weight he carried almost. Claire clapped her hands to gather the children. All right, team. Who wants to learn how to be a hero today? The kids shouted in unison. Me. They circled around as she demonstrated how to signal for help and explained what to do when someone falls or gets lost. Ava, brimming with excitement, kept raising her hand, eager to try every task. Then it happened in a blink. A small pup from the training pen wriggled free and darted away toward the far corner of the field. Ava gasped and gave chase, laughing. Puppy, wait. Before anyone could react, her foot caught a loose rock. She tumbled forward and disappeared into a shallow pit of sand, freshly dug by the maintenance team for a mock rescue course. A high-pitched cry rang out. Ethan's heart stopped. Ava. He dropped everything and sprinted forward, but someone got there first. Claire. Without a second's hesitation, she dove toward the edge of the pit, skidding down the slope without gear or caution. Sand scratched at her arms, and her palms burned as she scrambled down. All she could hear was Ava's trembling sobs. It's okay, sweetheart, Claire said, reaching her. I'm right here. Look at me. You're safe. I've got you. Ava's arms flew around her neck, trembling. Claire used her body to shield the girl from the falling sand as she searched for solid footing. Her shoulder scraped against a sharp edge, blood blooming through the fabric of her shirt. But she did not stop. With strength born of adrenaline and instinct, Claire lifted Ava in her arms, clutching her tight, and climbed up the side with gritted teeth. Gasps and frantic voices filled the air as staff and children watched in frozen shock. When Claire finally reached the surface, Ethan was there. He fell to his knees, pulled Ava from her arms, and held her like she might vanish again. Then his eyes met Claire's. She was breathing hard, hair full of sand, arms shaking, and a gash bleeding along her upper arm. But her expression, steady, calm, fierce, was burned into his memory now, just as it had been the first time. Not again, he whispered, voice thick. I can't believe it's you again. Claire gave a tired smile. Seems like fate doesn't want me to stop saving this little one. Ava wiped at her eyes, sniffling, and turned to Claire. Her tiny hand reached up, gently touching the bloodied arm. You're brave, like my mommy. The words silenced everything. Claire's lips parted, her breath catching. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed by emotion. They moved Ava to a nearby rest cabin to make sure she was okay. While a nurse checked her over, Claire sat under a tree in the distance, arms still bleeding slightly, her face pale but calm. Ethan walked over slowly, carrying a bottle of water and a pack of tissues. Without a word, he sat beside her, knee to knee, and began gently cleaning the wound. His hands, usually so firm and commanding in business meetings, were now careful, deliberate, tender. No suits, no titles, just a man trying to say something with his hands. I lost her once to the fire, he said, voice barely above a whisper. And you brought her back twice. How do I ever repay that? Claire looked at him, her smile soft despite the pain. You already did. You came back for her. That's all she ever needed. At that moment, Ava ran toward them, her pink dress catching the sun like a flame. She flung her arms around both of them, burying her face between their shoulders. Ethan wrapped his arms around them both, and in that quiet, imperfect moment, his heart, once frozen in grief, began to thaw. That evening, the training center had settled into silence. The laughter and barking from earlier had faded, replaced by the soft rustle of wind brushing through the trees. Shadows stretched long across the field, the open space bathed now in gentle moonlight. Ethan and Claire sat on the wooden balcony outside the staff lounge, overlooking the wide expanse of grass and silhouettes of training obstacles dimly visible in the night. A steaming mug of chamomile tea rested in Claire's hands, its warmth a quiet comfort against the cool air. Ethan sat beside her, elbows on his knees, fingers loosely intertwined as he watched the scene before them. Neither spoke for a while. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy with thoughts neither had dared to say aloud. It was the kind of stillness that holds all the unsaid things: loss, longing, guilt. Evening insects whispered in the distance. The occasional branch sighed, and the world seemed to pause, waiting for something to be spoken. Finally, Claire broke it. "You know the night of the fire," she said quietly, not looking at him. The words came soft, almost swallowed by the wind. "I was supposed to be off shift. My boyfriend, he was on the engine. He told me to stay home, but I heard the call over the radio, and something in me just ran." Ethan turned to her slowly, saying nothing as he tried to steady the sudden pulse of emotion in his chest. Claire stared out at the night, her profile outlined in moonlight. "We got there at the same time. There were kids trapped on the second floor. He went up first. I was helping outside with triage. I was still holding a little girl's hand when I heard the roof collapse." Her voice cracked slightly. She closed her eyes for a moment, the memory sharp in the dark. "I pulled 3 kids out that night," she whispered. "But I didn't get to him in time. He was gone before they pulled him out." Ethan's chest tightened. He hadn't expected the finality in her voice. The truth of it pressed against him like a weight. Claire let out a breath. "I left the department the next day. I couldn't put the uniform back on. Couldn't walk past the locker room and not see him. I thought maybe if I stayed away from fires, I wouldn't lose anyone again." The confession settled between them like smoke, transient yet lingering, filling the space with its presence. Ethan looked down, his voice rough. "I know that feeling." She turned to him gently, waiting. He took a quiet moment, gathering the fragments of his own memory. "I was on a flight back from Chicago when our house caught fire. He said my wife, she was upstairs with Ava. Somehow the fire started in the kitchen, spread fast. She tried to get to Ava, but collapsed from smoke inhalation before she made it. A neighbor pulled Ava out before the department arrived." He closed his eyes for a beat. "I got home just as they were carrying her body out. Ava was wrapped in a blanket, coughing, crying, but she was alive." Claire's hand reached over, rested lightly on his. Her touch was quiet but powerful. "I spent a whole year telling myself I should have been there." Ethan continued, voice low. "That if I'd flown home earlier, if I'd skipped the meeting, if I'd just been faster, maybe she'd be here." The pain in his voice wasn't raw anymore, but it was etched deep. Claire looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, "Maybe we're both survivors, and that's okay." Her eyes held something steady and kind. Ethan met her eyes. Something in him shifted like a door he had kept bolted, had finally creaked open. "Or maybe," he murmured, "we've just been waiting to meet someone who understands." Their hands stayed connected on the wooden bench. No more words needed. The stars above shimmered quietly, bearing witness to 2 broken hearts beginning to mend side by side. The call came just past dawn. Claire stared at her phone, the name flashing across the screen, Captain Ray's. She hadn't heard from her old fire chief in over a year. Hesitating, she picked up. "Claire," Ray's said, his voice taut with urgency. "We've got a major residential blaze in the West Hills. 3 buildings involved. We're short-staffed and evac teams are thin. I wouldn't call if it wasn't desperate. Her heart pounded. The sounds in the background, shouting, radios crackling, sirens pulled her back like a tide. She couldn't ignore them even if she wanted to. I'm not on active duty, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I know, but you've still got the instinct. We need you. When the call ended, she stood still for a long moment, her hand gripping the phone tightly. In the quiet of the early morning, the weight of what he'd asked sank in. She was letting that part of her go. The badge, the helmet, but could she still run toward fire when it found her? Ethan arrived at the center shortly after. Claire was waiting on the front porch, helmet bag at her feet, hair tied back tight. The early light picked out the dust on her jeans, the faint bruise on her forearm from a training drill 3 days before. He slowed when he saw her. You're going, he asked gently, but the question carried something heavier than curiosity. Concern, fear, she nodded. They need help, it's big, kids involved, evacuation still happening. Ethan looked at her, reading the doubt in her eyes. I haven't worn the gear in over a year, she admitted. What if I freeze? What if her voice caught as she met his gaze. You won't, he said firmly. You've already run into fire twice without a second thought. You don't need a uniform to be brave. Claire looked down at her. Boots mudstree from last week's rescue training drill. She felt the balance shift between who she'd been and who she might be again. Ethan stepped closer, voice softer now. Do what your heart says. I'll be here when you get back. Hey, something in his steadiness wrapped around her like armor. She nodded, lifted her bag, and got into the truck without another word. The engine rumbled to life, and the horizon glowed faintly orange as she pulled away. Hours passed. The news on the house TV in Ethan's living room flashed with images of thick black smoke, firefighters scaling ladders, families being guided to safety. Ethan sat rigid. Ava on the sofa clutched her stuffed bear tight, asking every few minutes, is she okay? The phone rang. Ethan jumped. Ava squeezed his leg. Claire helped rescue 2 children trapped in an upper floor unit. Rihia's voice said, but she slipped on a beam that collapsed and fractured her wrist. She's being admitted to County General. Ethan's breath whooshed out. We're coming. He scooped up Ava and raced out the door. When they arrived, Claire was sitting on a hospital bed in the ER. One arm in a sling, soot smudging her cheeks, and a fresh bruise forming on her jaw. She still managed to smile when she saw them. Ava ran to her instantly, wrapping tiny arms around Claire's waist. You were brave again, she whispered, pulling her stuffed bear from behind her back. This is for you now. Claire blinked rapidly, eyes welling up as she hugged the bear tight. Ethan moved toward her slowly, his expression torn between fear and awe. You could have been hurt worse, he said quietly, but I wasn't, she replied, and those kids, they're safe. Ethan exhaled shakily, then knelt down beside the bed. He reached for her uninjured hand, held it gently. I lost one family to fire. He whispered, emotion thick in his voice. I'm not losing another. Claire's breath caught. She didn't respond with words. She simply leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. And for a long, quiet moment, the past burned away behind them. The sun cast a golden glow across the newly completed Rescue Grove Park, a serene green space dotted with obstacle courses, shaded benches, and open fields designed for dog training and community safety programs. Families gathered around, children played with the rescue dogs, and banners flapped gently in the breeze. A small wooden stage stood in the center of the park, decorated with soft white flowers and a modest podium bearing the logo of Ethan's foundation. It had been exactly 1 month since Claire returned from the fire. Now she stood at the edge of the stage, hand in hand with Ava, who was dressed in her favorite pink dress. Claire's golden hair was tied in a soft braid, her other hand nervously gripping the hem of her blouse. She didn't know what the day would bring, only that Ethan had insisted she be there. As the final names were read from the donor list, the speaker paused. And finally, the MC said, "This park would not exist without the heart and heroism of one woman whose courage continues to inspire us all. Please turn your attention to the plaque behind you, newly installed on the memorial wall." Claire turned, her breath caught. Etched in bronze were the words dedicated to Claire Donovan, whose bravery saved lives and brought healing where fire once burned. Gasps and murmurs filled the crowd, followed by applause. Claire blinked, stunned. Then Ethan stepped onto the stage, dressed in a simple gray suit, no tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He walked with quiet purpose until he reached her and Ava. He knelt on one knee, opening a small wooden box in his hand. There was no diamond ring inside. Instead, nestled in soft velvet, lay a delicate silver bracelet, worn and aged, but polished with care. Claire stared at it, her mouth parting slightly. "This belonged to Lily," Ethan said softly, his voice clear despite the surrounding silence. "She wore it the day Ava was born. It was the last piece of her I couldn't bring myself to let go of." Claire looked up, her eyes shining. "This isn't a replacement," Ethan continued. "It's a continuation, a new beginning with someone who didn't just save Ava, but saved me too." Before Claire could respond, Ava reached into the box, carefully lifting the bracelet with both hands. She turned to Claire with a smile that lit up her face. "My mommy would have liked you," she said sweetly. "I just know it." Claire choked back a sob as Ava gently clasped the bracelet around her wrist, her small fingers working carefully. When it clicked shut, Claire looked at Ethan, who was still kneeling, eyes full of quiet hope. She nodded, unable to speak, and whispered, "Yes." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. Ethan rose, pulling both her and Ava into his arms. From the crowd, someone cheered. Then more joined in. Applause swelled around them like a warm embrace. Ava squealed, hugging Claire's waist tightly. "Yay. We're a family now?" Claire laughed through her tears. Ethan kissed the top of Ava's head, then turned to Claire and said quietly, "Let's go home." And for the first time in years, home wasn't just a place, it was person. It was two hearts healed by fire and stitched together by grace. If this story of love rising from ashes touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more unforgettable moments. At Kindness and Love Tales, we bring you true stories of healing, hope, and the quiet heroism that binds souls together. Every week you'll find tales that remind us all love doesn't always arrive when we expect it, but when it does, it changes everything. Share this story with someone who believes in second chances, and let's keep spreading the love, one story at a time. Subscribe now to Kindness and Love Tales. You won't want to miss what's next.